Okay, students, we'll start the session now because it's already 7:08. Let me see if anyone is there in the. Okay, no one. Okay. Okay, so welcome you all to the live NPTEL session. Uh, this is Environmental Impact Assessment course. This is live session 6 being conducted on 5th of March 2024, and the course instructor is Professor Harshit Mohan Lakra. She is Assistant Professor in Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee, and I am Rohit. I am PMR scholar in IIT Bombay. Before we begin this course, this is the teaching methodology that we follow in general in our classes. We even if you have any doubts, you can always feel free to ask in the discussion forum or here in the chat box. Otherwise, your questions are always welcome. So before I start this course, I want you guys to actually keep a revision like EIA. So in this course, in this week, actually a lot of things about EIA has been discussed about impact identification and all those things. So before you have a start at EIA, I want you guys to actually focus on this, not this one, this EIA process. So if you have any question regarding this, you guys, and because most of the things which we will discuss in today's interaction session will be based on this only. Okay, the project screening, scoping, identification, key impacts, a lot of things about this. Because earlier we were actually going towards EIA, how EIA evolved, how now we will specifically look into how EIA is conducted. Okay, what are the tools are available, how it is conducted. So there are various tools, various things, stochastic models, probabilistic models, mathematical modeling is also there to predict the impacts. So before that we go into much detail, I want you guys to have a focus on this, or if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, someone wants to join the call. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Please have a look at this slide before uh, we start solving the questions. Okay. like identifying key impacts. What are the different processes of identification of these key impacts? Prediction of impact. These are very important terms which are uh, very much goes into how EIA is conducted. Okay, let me see if anybody has what happened to your uh, what happened, sir, your system. Nothing, Bangichan. I wanted you guys to focus on this EIA system actually, how EIA is actually conducted. So basically, when we start this session, um, let's say when we are, wait a minute, this camera is okay. So when we will start this session actually, so we will discuss a lot about this impacts, how impacts are actually identified. So before we go into impacts, you need to have a good revision about how EIA is actually conducted. So before that, I wanted to share those slides. I wanted you guys to go into that and ask some questions regarding, do you think, like, if I want to conduct some impact study, so what are the different tools or methods which are available for um, identifying the impacts? Can you guys identify some of the methods or tools which can be used to identify the impacts? No one? Okay, no problem. So let us actually delve into this. So before that, so I will want you guys to look into that. So this is the full process, like project screening, scoping, description, identification. I think in the last 4 5 weeks we have gone much into this, how EIA process is. conducted, but how impacts everything, like how scoping is done, how screening is done. I think most of you guys have known up to now that which projects require EIA, that is screening, and scoping, what are the impact that are considerable to be calculated, so that is scoping. So before that, let's move into the question one. Okay, so European EIA directive requires an EIS, that is environmental impact system, to include a description of the project, description of the physical characteristic of the whole development, description of the main characteristic of the operational phase of the project, estimate by type and quantity of expected residue and emission. So these are the four options provided for the European EIA directives, and European EIA directives, will learn much more about that in the upcoming slides. So European EIA directives are actually a comprehensive directives for conducting a EIA. So yeah, it includes a descriptive some of the project, description of the physical characteristic, whole development, description of the main characteristic, and estimation by type and quantity. Okay, so these are the correct answers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now we'll look about the European EIA directive, what it does mean. Okay, let me see. Yeah. Okay, so the first European Impact Assessment Directive came into force in 1985. Okay, so 1970 we have NEPA in US. Okay, and then European Directive in 1985. The directive has been updated 4 times, bring it in line with EU's international commitments and other legal developments. In 2001 itself, the Directive 8537 EEC and subsequent amendments were codified into new act that is currently into force. So this can be a question in the exam, like which of the European directive is currently in the force. So you have to know Directive 2011/921 EU. Okay, now it is also amended to 2014 52 EU. Now, European EIA directive basically includes some of the terms like reporting something. So basically, when you do some EIA, then there is some reporting thing. So under EIA directive, you member state must provide statistics to the commission. Okay, so they are more focusing on the data, how the directive is implemented in the country every 6 years. Okay, so this includes the number of projects assessed under two in excess of the directive. So directive has two in excess under which projects are assessed. Average length of the time EIA process takes. So EIA process is not a, like it can be conducted in 1 or 2 days. It takes time to conduct a EIA process and the cost involved. So subsequently the cost will be involved because there is some stakeholder participation, some other things. The first reporting exercise is due in 2023. Okay, so see here for the commission proposal draft member states reporting. So if we see, this is actually the directive report from the Commission of Council, European Parliament, European Economic Council, and some. So this is the directive I downloaded from the European Commission website, and this is the report, actually the report which we are talking about. So they have actually published a report of 35 years of EU environmental impact assessment. Okay, so this is quite a comprehensive type of thing. Like EU is quite focused on something very, they are much more focused on environment. Like the member states of EU, like Switzerland, they have environmental tax when you enter that country. So how green, how sustainable lives they are more focusing on. Okay, now a second thing is impact identification techniques. So this is what I was saying. Okay, what are impacts identification techniques? So this is what I want you guys to basically concern about. So we'll learn more about the upcoming slides. Like I have made some few more slides on this impact identification technique, because I want you guys to know actually what goes into this impact identification. So that's why I wanted you guys to focus on the overall AI process, so that you know when I am talking about this impact identification, so you guys could grasp about what is that and how can the data can be collected, how impacts can be identified. Okay, so before I move to the next slide or something, so you guys can actually look into this impact identification techniques and see what are the current answers. Before that, let me see if anyone has any question. No questions? Okay, so before I move to the next anything, please feel free to answer this question. Okay, and then we will move to the next question. Okay, are you guys able to answer this question? No one? Don't worry, this is quite an easy question. Try to do it. Okay, so if we see this actually impact identification techniques for scoping purpose inward, so actually for scoping environment that are particularly valued should be identified. So first thing we do is to identify the environment which is actually valued. So whatever constitutes the neighborhood in the project or vicinity of the project should be identified clearly, like air, water thing or something, the ecosystem which is going to be impacted. So impact considered to be particular concern to the affected parties. So if a project is situated near the river, okay, and this river has some fishing activity always by the nearby villagers, so impact to the river are much more to be concerned, and this is a rocky terrain. So impact to the river are much more of concern than the impacts to the rocky terrain, because nobody is going to do agriculture on the rocky terrain. So more impact to be considered on the water bodies. This is what need to be identified. Methodology should be used to predict and evaluate different impacts. Okay, so methodology has to be very clear before evaluating any impacts, because any impacts need a proper methodology which are assigned to that. Scale at which those impacts to be considered are also very important. Okay, so all the four are actually correct, 1 2 3 and 4. So let me see if anyone of you has actually done this. No one actually. Are you guys getting comfortable with the questions which are here in the assignment? So if there is any question which you want to ask, please feel free to put your questions here. Okay, don't worry. You will you will not be judged on any of the things which you write here on the white box. So please feel free to ask any questions, any questions, any easy or hard, any typical question which you want to ask, because when you try to understand the basics, you can grasp the EIA thing in a much better way. Okay, so now we'll move to the impact identification techniques, how impacts are actually identified. So that's why made you guys to look into this EIA process. Then we'll move to the impact identification techniques. So environmental what impacts? Basically, impacts are the environmental attribute that are particularly valued should be identified. Okay, impact considered to be a particular concern to the affected parties. Second thing, the methodology Okay, so these are the statement which was given in the question. Okay, broad alternatives might be considered. Okay, outcomes would be identification of key issues, impacts, and alternatives. Now, what are the different methods of impact identification? So some of the methods, these methods are actually discussed in the article also. So I have made a more detailed thing so you guys can actually grasp about what is the method impact identification. So there are actually five main classes of quantitative impact identification, which you see. One is checklist, second is matrices, the third is networks, map overlay, and ad hoc method. So we'll discuss this one by one. Before that, I want you guys to actually look into these methods and search Google or something, and then come up with your questions in the chat box. Okay. So are you guys getting these things? Checklists, matrices, and networks, map overlays, or something? So let's look into this first things, checklist. Okay. So before going to the checklist, I will discuss this later. Okay, checklist is comprehensive list of environmental effects and impacts indicator designed to stimulate analysts to think broadly about the possible consequences of the contemplated action. Like what checklist is simple, a check type of thing like this impact, this can be the impact, this can be the impact. Okay, so it is much easier, much simpler to collect data from this, but there can be a lots of data, lots of columns, lots of rows in which you have to a checklist. So this is the disadvantage, and advantage is very simple. Just you have to check the and much more understandable to the audience also. So a typical type of checklist are there are generally four types of checklist. So One is simple, descriptive, questionnaire, threshold concern, and scaling checklist. Okay, so we'll look into this simple checklist like simple XX. So try to think of some of the checklists which are used. Give me some examples where checklists are actually used before we proceed. Okay. Okay, so basically, simple checklist is a list of environmental and parameters with no guidelines on how they are to be measured and interpreted. So simply like air pollution or something. So because air pollution, this type of checklist, okay, proposed activity, clearing, cutting, full, dredging, blasting, air quality, water quality, biological spawning habitat, rearing habitat. Okay, so these type of things are actually there in the simple checklist. Okay. Who is this phone call, sir? Uh, Hello, Magijan. You have any questions? Okay. Okay. No, it's I'm actually doing some work. Okay, so don't worry, don't look into that. Okay. So a list of environmental parameters with guidelines on how they are to be measured and interpreted. Okay. So another one is descriptive checklist includes an identification of environmental parameters and guidelines on how to measure data on particular parameter. So basically when you have a descriptive checklist, so descriptive is like providing description. Okay, so how it is different from simple checklist is like simple checklist you just have a very simple things. Descriptive checklist you also provide like nuisance, so what can be the change in occurrence of odor, smoke or something, so information sources, expected industrial process, traffic volume, these can cause nuisance, so this is part of a descriptive checklist. Okay. And another one is threshold checklist. So threshold checklist is actually you put a threshold. So whatever crosses that threshold, you are evaluating that. So it is not like you put your brain or something, you would judge the criteria or something. So you put a threshold. So this can be very difficult sometimes also. Like everything has to be evaluated, even if it's not so much uh, causing much impacts also. So consist of a list of environmental components, and for each component a threshold at which the assessing a proposal should become concerned with an impact. The implication of alternative proposals can be seen by examining the number of times that an alternative exceeds the threshold of a concern. Okay. So implication like number of times, so just like you put a line, this is the barrier, you cannot cross that, that is the threshold. So number of times it crosses that, you count that, and you know that yeah, this impact which need to be considered or something. So this is type of threshold checklist. Okay, then we have a matrix. So I will give you an example of, so we don't have example here. So matrix is basically a two-dimensional table. So you make a table here, you make a table here. Now you identify the impacts, like is this a high impact, is this a low impact or something. So I will suggest you guys to go into look into various examples also, like some of the examples are given in the lecture slides also, that will also help you to actually know more about this matrix thing. So matrix are two-dimensional tables which facilitate the identification of impacts arising from the interaction between project activity and specific environmental components. These they are essentially expansion of checklist. Okay, so checklist was one dimensional only, so these are two dimensional. That acknowledge the fact that different components of development project like construction, operating, decommissioning, buildings, access road. Okay, and that is in the cell of matrix can either qualitative or quantitative estimates of the impact. So these can be quantitative also, like you put the values also, like this much is the impact, or otherwise it can be qualitative also, like high impact, low impact. You don't quantify it, you just say low, high, relative type of things. Okay. Then we have network. Network is an alternative for illustrating secondary and subsequent events. Like you have air pollution thing, but in network you health problems are there affecting the photosynthesis of plants also. So this is type of network is illustrating the secondary and subsequent effects of the action on the environmental element to construct a network tracing effects. So this can be very helpful. Okay, the impact identification. The advantage of network approach is that it permits clear tracing of high order effects of initial action. Indeed, mitigation control measures can also be illustrated. One problem encountered in applying networks is that many higher order effects can be postulated that are actually unlikely to occur. So many effects can be seen, but they are not likely to occur. They are just like we are thinking that this can be also be bad, but they may not occur also. And second thing is, which is not tested here, makes it complex, very complex to identify the impacts. So this is one of the example of network, like this is the action A B C D, like querying, mining something. Okay, these are the impacts: air pollution, water pollution, groundwater pollution, something. Okay, so these are okay, like this work like this. So sometimes there are values also, so you can calculate the overall impacts also, so there can be questions based on this also. Now overlay and GA, this is very much actually very good thing where you actually see the impacts itself. So please see and read this slide and look if it can be actually uh, uh, understandable to you about the overlay and GIS thing. Okay, and let before that, let me see if there are any questions. No questions. Okay, so please look into that. Uh, okay, so did you guys got to know about this overlay and GIS thing? Okay, so basically, what is overlay? Overlay is basically what happens when you actually put something. So if there you have a map of the area. So when you have a map of area, so after 10 years you put a map again over that. So like this, you have a map of area, then after 10 years this map, after 10 years this map. So you can actually see the changes happening. So sometimes when you see the city of Bangalore, there are lots of lakes there, and after 10 years the lakes are actually shrinking in size and more buildings are coming out. So you can see to your what you say, your cities also, towns also, these type of things actually. So these can be actually visualize the impact. That is overlay. So effective visual is aid useful at documentation of environmental condition existing before project implementation, may describe both biophysical and social aspects of the area under study. Okay, so you have to see the both biophysical and social aspects of the area. This is actually overlay. So this is how the all the impacts are actually considered. That is same not checklist. This checklist, matrician, networks, overlay, ad hoc method. So ad hoc method is not discussed here, but any questions? One? Okay. So the next thing which we'll do is we will see the impacts prediction actually. So how impacts are actually calculated. So there can be deterministic models like gravity based models depending on the fixed relationship. So deterministic model is you can determine actually the impacts like just impact factor is known, like in case of pollution through vehicles, impact factor is known, you multiply it with kilometer, you know the exact impact. Some of the impacts can be probabilistic, so there can be lots of curves. Okay, so statistical probability, certain numbers of event will take place in the area or may not take place, so there can be, so deterministic, let me draw. So deterministic impacts can be like this. Okay, you know actually what will be the impacts time, but in probabilistic there can be many things like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay, so this is a probabilistic type of impact, anything can happen. So all the probabilities are actually based on the different functions models. So this is one of the thing to calculate the change in level of income over the region. Okay, so please look into it. Let me erase this will help you guys to actually uh, make them good. Let me see if anyone wants to join. Okay, no one. So please look into this table and see if there is anything which can be. Okay, so did you guys got to know this? stochastic and probabilistic type of methods? I think it's not that difficult if you want to understand. This is quite easy. So I think uh, before that, so let's move to the next question. So this is actually quite a easy question here. Like in India, terms of reference is used for scoping purpose. So yeah, before we do EIA and define the scope of the project, we have terms of reference generally by the client to the consultancy which is carrying the EIA. So yeah, this is actually true. Now, what is terms of reference actually? So please see this. Actually, what does scoping mean? Then what does this terms of reference actually means here? Okay, so did you guys got to know about this scoping thing? So basically, scoping refers to the process by which EAC in the case of category A projects, okay, SEAC in case of B1 projects, including application for expansion, modernization, or change in the product mix of existing project, determine detailed comprehensive TOR addressing all the relevant environmental concerns for the preparation of an EIA report in respect to the project or detailed activity for which prior environmental clearance is sought. The EAC SEC concerns shall determine TOR on the basis of information furnished in the prescribed application form 1, including TOR proposed by the applicant, a site visit by the subgroup of EAC or SEAC concerned only if the necessary considered necessary by EAC and SEAC concerned, and other information that may be available with the EAC or SEAC concerned. Okay. So this is actually scoping. Now another thing is terms of reference. So terms of reference are basically point wise. So this is actually you need to look into. That is called terms of reference. So do we get into the common expected environmental concerns? Okay. Terms of reference for the sector prepared given in the annexer 1. In addition, the proponent is required to identify specific issues, if any. So if any issues which you think the proponent, like consultancy agency or something who is preparing EIA report, is like pertinent to the project, include those also in the TOR for preparation of EIA and EMP report among approval TOR by the expert appraisal committee. So EAC is basically expert appraisal committee. So this is how some of the terms of reference can be found here in this link. So you can refer to this link here. And I think before we move to the next question, you guys can actually have a recap of this and then come up with your questions in the chat box. So I think let's see. And I have shared the slides already in the problem solving session. So you can access those slides there also. So if you found something which is worth asking, please feel free to ask. मैंने कुछ 200 250 240 वर्ड का वेबसाइट लिखा था और वो मांग रहा है 200 वर्ड का करना पड़ेगा तो मैंने ऊपर के 2-3 लाइन हटा दिए तो सर को भेजूं फिर कि नहीं क्या करूं फिर ऐसे ही अपलोड सर कुछ बोलेंगे नहीं पक्का अपलोड कर दूं सर वो जो पेज आएगा उसमें पढ़ लेंगे हाँ हाँ ठीक है Okay, so any questions which you guys want to ask? Okay. Oh, I think. Okay, so did you guys got to know? Let me see if any question is there. No question? So let's move to the next question then. So there can be like type of EIA, the rigorous EIA, streamed EIA, ethical EIA, adaptive EIA. So basically rigorous EIA is systematic and intensive EIA. So it's intensive actually. So procedure desirable where scientific analysis can support decision making. So something which has a very good actually like power plant type of thing or dam, something big projects which are actually more EIA requiring. So rigorous EIA is done. Then we have streamlined EIA, which is basically the style period when resources are limited or less data is available. So something where very less data is available. So we basically pull up the data and whatever data is available, we streamline it and do rapid EIA. And ethical EIA is basically style is adopted when issue of fairness, equity, and justice are more important. Like in some case of like tribal community or something where EIA is done. Then we have adaptive EIA, which is basically EIA style is adaptive when turbulent and complex situations persist and there are risk, uncertainty, and health concern. Like sometimes when you do for the projects which are not uh, Chernobyl nuclear reactor. So when you go into that reactor, many people don't know actually what are the impacts. So adaptive EIA has to adapt itself. Okay. So style of EIA process like findings, data, coordinated scientific techniques, method preparation, everything is there. So balanced rational approach, democratic EIA, collaborative EIA, ethical EIA, adaptive EIA. So lots of this. We will discuss more into that. So before that, please look into this slide if you have any questions. Okay. Okay, so you got to know about this. So next one is actually we'll get to know about this process one by one. So regress or systematic impact EIA. So it is available when scientific analysis can support decision making. Okay, then another one is rational balance process adopted when stakeholder can participate actually freely. Okay, so when there is a uh, like a stakeholder participation, so where a free participation can be there, so rational balanced EIA can be adopted at that time. Then we have streamlined or is rapid EIA process where resources are limited, data is available. Okay, less data is available. Then we have democratic EIA process. Okay, similarly, these type of process are there which you have to actually look into when you are going for this EIA thing. Okay, so work best when proponents are willing to assign their decision making authority to representative who in turn have the energy and resources to participate in planning and decision making. So similar type of like we have elections in India and we elect our representatives who actually make decisions. So similar to that democratic EIA, collaborative EIA process, like it's a democratic process, but with the stakeholder being directly engaged in the process or having the resources to do so. So that is collaborative EIA process. Okay. Similarly, we have ethical EIA process required when issue of fairness, equity, justice predominate when the stakeholders are willing to identify and reconcile their ethical concept conflicts. So there can be ethical conflicts also. So you will get to know like ethical conflicts are something like you are doing some experiments on human or something. Okay, adaptive AI process is appropriate for turbulent and complex situations like we discussed in the question also, like something which are not known actually. Uncertainty is there, health predominant, where AI need to take into account the knowledge limits and uncertainty related concerns. Okay, so this type of AI is there. So before looking into this AI thing as a whole, there are types of AI which are to be actually consulted. Okay. Okay, so now we move to the next question, like types of impact prediction with examples like hard models, mixed models, soft models, and what are the different predictions. So you have to match all these two in. So try to match them actually. Okay, so this is the hard model EIA. So where use of mathematical situational model plays a significant role. Okay, so like we saw the example in the last question or last to last question. So in hard model, more into simulation type of things. Okay, so hard model is basically where use of mathematical situational model plays a significant role, like simulation data. Mixed model where simulation modeling is complemented with more technically more ground level data. Short model where use of mathematical simulation modeling virtually non-existent. Okay, so hard model type of thing is like when you do air and noise impacts, like aero mod is one of the thing we use for hard modeling. Okay, of air pollution type of things. Mixed modeling is basically traffic impacts considerable use of modeling, like there is like emission factors are there which are actually measured on ground, and it can be multiplied with kilometer travel to uh, directly get the emissions data from the vehicle. So it's kind of mixed model. Soft model is basically perception studies. Okay, so types of impact prediction. So this is what I was saying, like you have to we were actually looking into the AI process as a whole. Now we look each of the things, like impacts are calculated, how is impacts prediction, all those things. Okay, so where mathematical simulation plays a central role, like we discussed in the hard modeling, like air or noise impacts, air pollution impact prediction. Gaussian dispersion model is one of the, okay, simulate the shape of the pollution plume. Then we have soft model where the use of mathematical simulation model is virtually non-existent, like cultural resource assessment, mapping inventories, perception studies, photo images, use of GIS, okay, like overlay type of things. And we have mixed model where simulation modeling complemented by more technically lower level of traffic impacts. Okay, so learn more about this impact factors, emission factors. Now we are moving to the choice of AI method is based on the following range of consideration. Okay, so before that, please try to solve that, and let me see if there are any questions from you guys which you, what are, no questions from you guys. So no problem. If there are no questions, then I think we can actually move to this. Okay. So if there are no questions, then please we can move to the next uh, thing. Okay. So we already have lots of slides to discuss, and last 40 minutes are remaining. So choice of EIA methods actually. So choice of EIA methods are actually based on the following considerations. So there is a geographical areas, then different stages of assessment is there, then resource at hand and criteria of applicability. So all of these are actually considered when you uh, look into choice of method of EIA methods. So all of these are considered. So now linking it from the contents of the slide. So output required for the pattern considerations. So geographical area, definitely the sources you have, criteria of applicability, consistency and adaptability are the other two. Okay. So if you select a AI method which is not consistent, which is giving one result at one time, second result at other time, so we don't choose that method. Another one is adaptability. So it has to be adaptable for all the situations. Like it can be implemented for the hilly region also. It can be implemented for the plain regions also. So this is how AI method is actually more looked into. Okay. Now you have to state true or false. Okay. So following diagram shows causal network diagram that demonstrate causal relationship between their element that can be used to identify what kind of impacts will happen when from a proposed project. So this is the diagram. So we were discussing the identification of impact. So there were network diagrams. So this is one of the network diagram which can be seen here. Like there is a housing project, so that will be for population increase, then need for public services will be there, traffic will also increase, noise will increase, aesthetic aspects of area has to be considered. So with the addition stream quality, available housing has to be considered. So this is actually a true diagram, basically true statement. Now I have put it here as a big diagram so you guys can actually see and look into how the available housing projects actually goes. So these are negative statement and these are the positive things which will actually be required. Causal networks. So causal networks are basically diagrams that demonstrate causal relationship between their environments. So it has the relationship has to be causal, not a very like complex relationship. It can be used for transparently demonstrate cause and effects. Okay, the special identifier of causal networks are diagrammatic representation of a relationship among the elements and their attribution quality to those relationships. The networks are abstract diagrams with nodes and links. Both the network logic and causality logic of the networks relate well to the EIA process. Now decision tree for determining environmental acceptability. Okay, so this is quite decision tree. So decision tree is something like there is a root, then branches are there. So similarly impact, and then we identify the different impacts. So this is type of a decision tree box. Based on that, we make a decision. So actually, I put the decision diagram here. So basically, P is actually acceptable, Q is manageable, then R is abandoned in the whole part. So some if there is impact and that is acceptable, then proceed to the next step, like some impacts which are below the limit, so we can proceed to the next step itself and build the project. But there are some impacts which are manageable, so with proponents commitment, how much commitment will be needed, and with regulatory controls, how it can be regulatory controlled, what are the regulatory controls for that, Then another one is like abandon in whole or part. So some impacts which cannot be managed or unacceptable type of thing. Okay, so either we redesign it, or like some power plant which is polluting a lot. Okay, unacceptable. So either we need to redesign it, put more of the flue gas control units, more pollution control devices. So either redesign it, otherwise we simply abandon the whole or part. Okay, so we stop it. So you can see the whole diagram here. Okay. So you could see different. So identify a project, and you can see itself how this decision tree actually works. Okay, so let's see if you have got any questions. So let's move to the next question then. Now the next question is order the following stages of cost benefit analysis. So applying sensitivity analysis, identifying the physical impacts of the project and policy, valuing impacts, then discounting cost and benefit flows, applying the net present value, defining the project policy. So first thing we do is defining the project policy. So project is actually defined. Okay. Next thing is applying sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity is done. Then third is actually valuing impacts. Okay. Then fourth is identifying the uh, I think first is defining the project policy, then second is actually identifying the physical impacts. Okay, identifying the physical impacts. Third is valuing impact. So physical impacts are identifying, then valuing impacts has been valued. Then we have discounting cost and benefit. So cost is there, benefit is there. Then we have applying net present value, which is one of the terms of cost benefit analysis. How do we know that how much will be the time in which we can get the payback for the project? Then we have applying the sensitivity analysis. Okay, so sensitivity analysis, what if some value changes, what if the price of coal changes? So let me take it cost benefit analysis in terms of power plant project, coal power plant, be specific, coal power plant. Okay, so first thing is that we will define the project. Okay, so project is defined, coal power plant project policy 4000 megawatt. Now the second thing which we'll do is identify the physical impacts. So physical impacts can be land degradation, noise, air, water. There can be many impacts. This can be major. Okay. Then we value those impacts. How much is the land degradation? How much is the noise generated? How much is the air pollution? How much water is getting polluted? And how what are the impacts? Then after that we discounted the cost benefit flows. So we after impacting we, so let's see, we have a cost and we get a benefit. So cost is now we have to clean all these things. Okay, and constructing the power plant also. So let's say per megawatt it's 5 crores per megawatt is the cost. Okay, of building this power plant. And then benefits, we derive that we get electricity at the cheaper price. Okay, so and then we actually do a net present value test based on that. So we get to know that after 10 years we will get our money back and it will be a profitable plant, and with not much after all the things, all the pollution control device, this can be get profitable in 8 to 10 years. Then we do sensitivity analysis. Let's say the price of coal changes, we have taken initial price to be 100 rupees per kg. Let's say price of coal changes to 150. Another thing is like, let's say we have taken electricity as 4 rupees per unit, we'll sell to the market, but after 10 years this can be 8 rupees per. Okay, so this is what is done in sensitivity analysis, and we see what are the different cost benefits, all those things are there, so that can be actually put into use in considering the cost benefit analysis of a power plant. So this is how a cost benefit analysis is actually done. So basically, when we see the cost benefit analysis, a systematic process of evaluating the desirability of a decision by weighing its potential benefits and costs. So we first see the cost and then we see the benefits, and then we see whether cost is actually more, whether benefits are actually more. So if benefits are more, we go with the opposite. If costs are more, then we try to scale it down or try to redesign or something. Okay. So there are various stages of cost benefit analysis also, like defining the project policy. This is taken from the slides. So source is John Glass on Ricky Thirlwell 2018. Identify physical impact, value impact, discounting cost benefit flow, applying net present value, applying sensitivity analysis. Now the next question is shadow pricing, discount pricing. Okay. Shadow pricing is basically aggregation of our goods, comparing goods in one form and benefits in the other form, like concrete used for damage type of cost, and the electricity produced from it is in some other type of like another form. So we are putting concrete, we are getting electricity, so we compare it. How do we compare it? Then we do shadow pricing type of thing. Okay. Discount pricing is something that is aggregation over time, comparing cost incurred now and the benefits expected in future. Like if we build a power plant, we have to put cost now building a power plant, but in future after 5 years when the whole power plant is completed, then we will have the electricity, then we will sell that electricity and then we'll recover back the cost. So that is discount pricing. Then we have equity weights. Equity weights are aggregation over people comparing cost according to different people. So uh, like which you can see. So there can be example of equity weights like people who are living much nearer to the power plant has more affected by the power plant emission than those who are living much far away. So this can be equity weight when we compare the impact. So they have more weight compared to that person who is living far away. So shadow pricing is aggregation over goods comparing cost in one form. So this is what we see. Discount pricing is what was seen earlier. Then aggregation over people comparing cost occur to different people. Cost of rupees 100 to a wealthy person like some wealthy person who are billionaire is not much than a poor person who is on a road living on the alms. So equity weights are to be used in that case. So a wealthy person will not feel 100 rupees is very less for him, but for a poor person 100 rupees is like 1 lakh rupees for him. He can get the food for 2 or 3 times that 100 rupees. Okay, so equity weights has to be applied. Shadow pricing. So term shadow pricing is used to refer either of the two things: the actual value of the money market fund share when its stated value is $1 per share, assignment of dollar value abstract commodity. So I think I should not go into much detail. So this I have taken from the internet so that I could make you understand about the shadow pricing. But I think it's clear shadow pricing. What is shadow pricing? So we have one type of thing that goes into cost and another benefit which we derive. Okay, so and discounting the process of determining the present value of a payment or the stream of payment that is to be received in the future. So we are going to be selling electricity after 5 years. So what we do, we discount that price to a current price and then we evaluate the cost benefit. Given the time value of money, a dollar is worth more today than it would be tomorrow. So discounting the primary factor using the price of a stream of tomorrow's cash flow. Equity weight select. So this is how equity weights is actually applied. This is the whole scenario through which the equity weights are actually weights. So equity weights are like weight assigned to different variables. Four levels in increasing public power and public participation methods. So there can be information feedback methods. Okay, then there is consultation, then there is joint planning and delegated authority. So if you see the public power and participation methods, all of these four are actually involved. So let's see the next slide. We'll get to know more about this. So four levels of increasing public power and participation methods: information feedback approaches, consultation, joint planning, delegated authority. So simple is key when we try to have a public participation or something. So first thing is that we can sort information or feedback from the people directly. Then we can consult them. Okay, then we can have a joint planning with them also. Otherwise delegated authority. So people can delegate their authority to the representatives and those representatives can come and have a participation. Okay, so I think okay, admit. Huh. So this is what we were actually thinking in terms of this public participation or something. So before we go into next 3 or 4 questions which are remaining, I think 3 questions are remaining. So I want you guys to look more into this thing and ask if there are any questions which you want to discuss. Like this cost benefit analysis is one of the analysis that was done earlier before EIA. So now EI is there. So environmental impacts are actually this is actually done at that doesn't mean cost. EIA is there. That doesn't mean cost benefit analysis is not done. EIA is kind of environmental type of analysis, but cost benefit analysis is always done for any project in India or somewhere in the world. Okay. So if you want to ask any question related to this cost benefit analysis, please feel free to ask. Okay, so let's see if you have any questions. No questions? Okay, so no problem. We'll move to the next. Okay, so now we have to match these with the. Okay. So obtain public input into decision taken elsewhere. So there is a broad purpose, then we have to identify the specific purpose or activities. Obtain public input into decision taken elsewhere. Okay. So this is basically provide public information, fill information gap, problem solving, and social learning. So this is actually shared decision making with the public. So this is actually reflect democratic because you are sharing decision making with the public. Reflected democratic principles AI used to obtain consent of those affected. Democracy and participation as an educative function. Then altered distribution of power structures of decision making. Then involving marginalized groups shift the locus of decision making. So the correct answer is P2 Q3 R1. Okay. So this is from the slides where this question was there. So most of the question which you see is there from the slides itself. So there is not much uh, problem when you try to solve these type of questions. So if you have gone through the slides, you can easily go through the assignment question. Those are very easy question, which on most of the questions in the exam will be from the slides only. So make sure you are thorough with the slides. When these slides actually contain a very good information about the EIA, how EIA is done, and how, so you will get to learn a lot. Then there is components of monitoring should include, so summary of significant impacts identified in the environmental impact report. Okay, then we have mitigation measure also. Okay, and monitoring requirements and responsible agency for each mitigation measure, timing and frequency of the monitoring. So all of those are actually part of the monitoring system itself. So when we see the slides, component of monitoring, a summary of the significant impacts identified in the environmental impact report, mitigation measures recommended for each significant impact, monitoring requirements, responsible agencies for each mitigation measure, person or agency responsible for the monitoring of the mitigation measure, timing and frequency of the monitoring, and agency responsible for ensuring compliance with the monitoring program. So all of these are actually component of a monitoring process. So these actually goes into the in this EIA thing and monitoring thing. And monitoring is very much important because most of the things which are not monitored are not actually adhered to the with the guidelines. So, and monitoring actually creates a feedback data loops through which we can get the feedback from whatever report or whatever strategy is implemented for the EIA. Okay, then I think this is the last question. So you have to state true and false basically. So implementation monitoring involves checking that the project has been implemented in accordance with the planning approval and mitigation measures have been carried as proposed and that any condition associated with the approval has been honored. So basically if you see this statement is actually talking about the implementation monitoring. Okay, and involves checking the project has been implemented. Let me see if somebody is there to join. Okay, we were talking about this implementation monitoring. So whatever when you uh, do implementation monitoring involves like implementation monitoring. So involves checking the project has been implemented. So first thing you check is that key whether the project has been implemented or not in accordance with the planning approvals. So whatever approvals were given for the project has been done and on the site as per the requirements or design which has been there. And the mitigation measures like if you have a power plant, then there can be requirement of a wet surface rises, reaudit or electrostatic precipitators. So these are mitigation measures through which we capture the pollution, air pollution. So these has been implemented or not, and that any condition associated with the approval have been honored actually. So yeah, so this is a true statement actually. So basically, when we see the implementation monitoring was checking that the project has been implemented in accordance with the planning approval, that mitigation measures have been carried out as proposed, and that any conditions associated with the approval has been honored actually. Okay, so this is what actually involves implementation monitoring. Okay, so I think in this live session we discussed a lot of things, so I will have a quick recap also. So this is European directive impact identification technique. This is very important slides. I will put this slide in the problem solving session. Please try to see this slide because I have tried to put some very important identification, try to explain it how what it is actually. So this is mathematical models. So just to know that okay, there are mathematical models which actually goes into identification or determining the impact. So these are based on stochastic and deterministic models also. So if you want to solve any questions, I can give you questions also in the slide, but that will be very much dependent on the those who have mathematical background can grasp it easily. But don't worry, these there are softwares which actually predict these type of models also. So no problem, even with the Excel you can do it. A lot of like with the Excel you can do a Monte Carlo simulation where you can predict the output of a coin or something. So these can be actually implemented for the predicting impacts also. Checklist are then we talked about checklist, then different types of checklist like simple descriptive questionnaire, threshold concern, scaling checklist, then a list of environmental parameters with no guidelines on how they are to be measured and interpreted. Okay, Descriptive application includes the identification of environmental parameters, guidelines on how to measure data on the particular parameters, and threshold checklist. Okay, so each component threshold at which assessing proposal should become concerned with an impact. Okay, matrix. So matrix, look into that. So metrics actually provide a very good way to actually visualize impacts. Network is, we have seen an example of network on the question 7 or 8 also. So network is an alternative for illustrating the secondary and subsequent effects of action on the environmental. Means is to be construct a network tracing. Then these are type of examples. And we have overlays and GIS. Uh, in terms of reference is used for scoping purpose. Okay, match EIA with different groups. So we looked into different types of EIA process. Then modeling, hard modeling, mixed modeling, soft modeling. Okay, so let me give a question on modeling itself. So you guys can do it in the free time. Let's say a vehicle is there. So let's say talk about them first. So let's say a vehicle is there. You can assume any vehicle. Okay, so let's say a car is there. uh, you can assume a good sedan car. Mercedes is there. Okay, Mercedes car is there. So through this Mercedes car you traveled 100 kilometer. Okay, and went to your home from some distance, 100 kilometer. Now this emission factors for CO2 emission from this car is actually 0.12 gram per kilometer. Okay, out of this 80% is CO2 is released in the atmosphere, and 20% is captured. Okay, so I can make it more complex, but I will keep it simple so that everyone can attempt this question. Now you have to determine how much CO2 is released into the atmosphere in grams or kilogram, whatever you want units. You take any unit, gram or kilogram, and how much CO2 is actually captured. Okay, gram or kilogram, whatever. So solve this question. We'll solve the take this question in the next upcoming week lectures. So this is a very easy question. It's a type of modeling itself. Okay, mathematical modeling where you determine the emission from a vehicle. Okay, so thank you all for this wonderful session, and we'll meet again in the next session on Tuesday. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask, and please write to me at this email ID. Okay, and please try to go to the problem solving session reminder. I have uploaded all the videos. Please go through those videos, and also these slides are actually uploaded there, so you can go through the slides also. So thank you all. We will meet again on the next Tuesday. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, and keep posting on the discussion forum. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Magijan. And thank you all. Good night, everyone. Have a good week ahead. Okay.